The Lekker Rugby Pod, rugby across the globe from a South African perspective.
This is a Lekker Rugby podcast. My name is MW Welman, and with me is Harry Jones. We're going to have a bit of a chat about rugby in future. Hello, Harry.
How's it, MVM? What's going on? How's it going with you?
No, man, it's never better. As we sit here, it's clouding over, and the cold front that's been threatening for a couple of days now has now officially arrived here in Pretoria. Now, you've had a couple of problems with where you are over in the States. Tell us about that. Where are you at the moment, just as a matter of interest?
Yeah, so I inhabit the borderlands, that mythical place, Pecos, Texas, and the big lands and all the action. So I primarily base myself in North Texas, which is at Dallas, along with 25,000 other Saffers, the great diaspora of South Africa. I'm actually originally a Cape guy, Western Cape. I think I invented the red card for my playing games. I was the reason why we had to have these fixed cards instead of just being sent off. I was being sent off so much. No, I've always been someone who was able to play and then write about rugby across the world, Argentina, Uruguay, Lyon, France, just around the world. And in my private life, in my real life, professional life, I fix things. I make stories end differently. Whether it's a guy who's on the run, haven't taken money, we got to catch him in New Orleans airport, get the air out of his tires, then, see where he runs to next, try to buy a boat to the Caribbean. But then he ends up, because I talked to his ex-wife and he says, no, he'll be at the Johnny Cash Museum in Memphis. That's where he goes when he's in trouble. I nab him there, get the money back. So that, which sounds a lot like loose forward play, to be honest. So, the loose forward Safa brain is the kind of brain you want when you want to fix a problem in Honduras and the gold mines. Safa's everywhere, doing hard business for other guys who don't want to do it. We get our hands dirty. We're very smart, and with just enough handsome and just enough funny, we can get it done.
It sounds like a movie. Never mind loose forward play.
Yes, it's true. My life is a movie. I also work in the rugby space for places like Tonga, Samoa, people who don't get a fair shake. They're expected to go to the World Cup every 4 years and perform, but they have no training facilities. The money comes later instead of beginning. And so I've been trying to work with World Rugby. Sir Bill Beaumont's been actually pretty good, Simon Rawalui, of trying to make these spectacles where lots of teams could win, instead of just, in the end, you think it's going to be 4 teams that might win the World Cup. Wouldn't it be great if 16 teams could win? So, our Bok brains don't like that, but I think it's better for the sport. So I've always been global about this thing. I part on 8-9 combo with an Aussie, and we try to address all the competitions in the world. And when you said to me, hey, Harry, what if we could do a North-South derby of our own? What if we could make the Lekker become Lekker? What if the Lekker got even a little more Lekker when you come out of the Hex River Valley and over the Sir Lowry's Pass and you see Cape Town, and then you realize that Saffers are everywhere, London, Toronto, Sydney. I was all about it, and I'm really happy you invited me, even if you're going to rip up my Harry index and tell me why it's wrong.
I'm not going to rip it up. I'm just going to improve it substantially, but nevertheless.
Make it more smart.
I'm more of a numbers person, like I told you. Tell us what the Harry Index is before you start tearing me apart there.
The Harry Index is highly subjective, yet oddly objective. It's like our brains, like how do you buy a car? You want to pretend it's about safety, there's like specifications. Nah, you also want to look cool. You want to be like someone who rolls in like a player. So everyone makes decisions on lots of bases. The Harry Index tries to be honest about that, which is, in the end, there's an eyeball test, but there's also an imagination test. Do you really think that because we have a lot of people in the stands and we keep saying that the one player is the best player who ever played rugby, but really the game is kind of it's a good game, Champions Cup final, but it's not like transcendent, like the quarterfinal between France and the Boks. But are you really going to tell me that you couldn't find a Kiwi team to do well in the Irk? I mean, I think you could put the Blues or the Hurricanes in the URC, and within 2 seasons, they're doing just what the Stormers did. Because are you really going to tell me that a team from Auckland is going to be that much worse than a team from Cape Town or vice versa? I mean, they've always been the best 2 teams, the best 2 regions, Pretoria, Wellington, Auckland. These are catchments of great players. So the Harry Index was this ability I tried to say, who is the top 10? And then I kind of said, nah, I'll do the top 20. So top 20 clubs in the world with all these mismatched leagues, with top 14 having the more money, with Leinster having more of the puppeteer behind it, making Leinster have more of the players, some top ups. How good is the Super Rugby still? What about the ERC, which seems to have leapfrogged? And so I try to set them out and say, what's my top 20? And then I sort of didn't try to be too objective where you go, what's the numbers here and there? Because sometimes people sort of throw a game like the Bulls did in Northampton. And so I don't go, like if the Bulls had to play Northampton for the lives of their mothers and fathers, it wouldn't go like that, So I would imagine a neutral game in Dubai, one in Pretoria and one in Northampton, and then I just kind of mix it up. And what's interesting is it's polarizing and contentious, and some of it's pulled out of my arse, but it's also highly prestigious. People are debating it. I saw Gainline Analytics go on and say, "No, Harry's got some method to the madness." Like, I don't know what the method to my madness was, but I do it handwritten so it looks kind of religious and sacred. And, you just come up with something, it becomes a thing. So I'm hoping the Harry Index, the HI replaces the AI. And I'm hoping that people start to use it as saying, look at us, we went up 3 places. So that's what I'm saying. But it's highly dependent on the facts on the ground. And the next knockouts could really change the Harry Index, which I post every week, by the way.
Yeah, on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it this week. Yeah, you see it there, and then you and I also had a bit of a discussion because I tend to be overly objective, and you, because I was honest with you when we started talking about this. I haven't watched Super Rugby in years. I mean, ever since the New Zealanders kicked us out of the competition quite unceremoniously. I just told them to go stuff it. I wasn't interested. Now I see suddenly, yes, these guys are not doing that badly. The Blues and the Crusaders, the Blues and the Hurricanes, sorry, don't talk about the Crusaders. Blues and Hurricanes are shooting the lights out. Those guys are playing some bloody good rugby, and it's a sort of ominous, just before the championship coming up.
Yeah, and the team sheets matter, right? So it wasn't that long ago that we saw it was difficult to tackle Mark Talea, no matter what kind of rush, umbrella, and Jacques Nienaber, negation, PSDT defense. He's a tough guy to tackle. So when he's, playing for the Blues, you go, okay. You have Hoskins Satutu, who's one of the form number 8s, just one of those huge-handed guys, pick the ball at the base. He can get his hands through the tackle. You've got Dalton Papali'i, Akira Ione. You've got an all black front row. You've got finishers. You got people who know how to finish. Caleb Clark is untackleable this year. So for me, it's also to think like, okay, did suddenly all those French or Irish guys get better than New Zealand guys? No, I think they're probably par. Do the Blues play the same level of competition as top 14 guys? No, because top 14 guys have $60 million budget, pounds, sterling, euro payrolls. And so they can do fit for purpose hires. They can just add a guy. Hey, Jack Willis, come over here. So that's true. I get that part. But I still kind of think if it was for all the marbles, I wouldn't count my Kiwi brothers out. I just wouldn't. I haven't seen that happen in my life or the lives of the grandfathers that told me about rugby. I don't bet against the Kiwis that often when it comes down to crunch.
Something that you mentioned just now, some games were not, I don't want to use the word thrown, but they went into the game knowing they're going to lose, like the Bulls did against Northampton. Yep. And it's simply because the Bulls and everybody in the URC, everybody in the top 14 and everybody in the premiership have to compete in 2 major tournaments overlapping, and whereas the Super Rugby guys don't. And I talked about this just before we started recording, is that Toulouse in total, including the championship knockouts, everything, played 32 games this year so far, and the Super Rugby guys only played 14. So that starts getting a bit more difficult when you want to really compare it objectively, and that's where I suppose where your subjectivity comes in. And I tend to go the opposite way of what you're saying. I mean, it's easier to win fewer games than it is to win a lot of games quite consistently. What do you think?
Yeah, but for me, the reward of that particular analysis is inside the leagues itself. It'll be with trophies. It'll come that way. Harry Index tries to say, but who would really win? Like in a tournament of actual champions, an imaginary tournament where everyone was in the right space. Somehow we got the biorhythms correct and we could organize. I guess that's the dream of the Club World Cup in 2028. But in that
27.
kind of scenario, I always like, just like when you go into the World Cup and it's like the French will crush everyone and the Irish number one, you go, yeah, it'll be boxing New Zealand. And you kind of, you put your money down. I did. And it funded most of my 7 weeks in France because I knew that the All Blacks couldn't be written off. Why? Because they just have ceiling. Why does James Lowe, a middling guy in New Zealand, become the god of the long kick up north? Why does Jameson Gibson Park, who couldn't really get a starting spot at the Hurricanes, become the best or second best 9 in the north? Why does Bundy Aki become the greatest Irish 12 ever when he was just okay, right, in New Zealand schools rugby? Same thing with Handre Liebenberg, same thing with Stefan Levis, same thing with Odendaal, same thing with Duan van der Merwe. There's so many examples of Southern athletic talent not properly coached, goes north, gets better because the coaching setups, the money does matter at coaching, analytics, 5, 6, 7 analytics guys at Harlequins, no analytics guy, Stormers. Just a guy, throwing some apples in Elgin, like the son-in-law guy. Yeah, he went to school. He studied some statistics. But like, if you're going to be really like one of those guys with visionary, mathematics skills, they're somewhere in London right now. We're working for one of those clubs. Maybe they're even doing for football. So I just think when I look at it from a skills, talent, I think in the end, when it really matters at a knockout and everyone's properly applied and you do have the proper coaching, then that extra, athlete, Peter Steph Toy, he wins. Artie Surveyor, that extra leg drive, he wins. Because you cannot hide anymore. Just the clever systems that run dummy lines and late break lines for Ireland. Okay, it's a beautiful bicycle with great spokes, but I'm going to smash your spokes. I'm just going to run through them. And I'm a bully. I'm better than you and bigger than you, so I'll win. So I think in the end, I put Harry Index magic in there and say, but what if? And here's the thing as well. People who argue with me, and they're having fun with it. I like it. In the next few weeks, it'll all come clear. So if your team really is that great, Munster, we'll see it rise because you'll win. And then you'll be in the top 2 or 3. Right now, I've got you somewhere around 10, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. Wonder where I have the world in a second. I want to check now.
you have some love for the Kiwi teams.
I do actually. I wasn't surprised. I was shocked. My third team was the Brumbies. I mean, bloody hell. That's what a good thing. But
they played proper South African rugby. They played Jake White rugby.
Yeah.
He brought the Pretoria to Canberra and it stayed. It stuck.
No, they're third. I mean, they are third in the log as well. 86% winning percentage. And they win a game by an average of about 7 points. I mean, that's not bad going. And I actually have them above Leinster.
I have them at 12 because I'm so subjective. Yeah. But the good thing for Brumbies is they have a pathway, right? So they play the Highlanders, which is the 4th strongest Kiwi team. So they win that, then I would imagine they're going to go up. Just like depending on what happens between Bath and the Saints will matter. The Kiwi teams usually have Hunger Games, so then that'll make them come down. Yeah, so I expect in the next couple of weeks that we're going to see who the top 10 really is, top 5.
You know what? As we're speaking now, or talking now, I can feel that disconnect in. The Brumbies cannot possibly be third. It's just not possible. I know what you're saying now in terms of the Brumbies. I know in terms of my initially completely objective approach, it works. But when you really think about it, when you start, wrapping not your hair around it, your heart around it, let's call it that, then it doesn't make sense. I have to reconsider. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, you have to have some. It's like when you're trying to decide something for your family or anything, you go pro and cons, and then you always trick it at the end. You go, no, I don't like the way this pro and cons come out.
Too many cons. Let's forget about the cons.
I want to get the Toyota Land Cruiser. Let's put some more weight on the durability of the bolted-in windshield.
There we go. But you just mentioned, we talked about it before. You told me to go have a look at the premiership, at the semi-finals being played this weekend, and after the game, you WhatsApp me and said, listen, watch Johan van Graan's emotion after that game. Bath that he coaches beat the Sale Sharks, and you just mentioned again how many South Africans are in those teams. And the interesting thing for me, even in the Northampton Saints, and the one name, for example, in Northampton Saints that stood out for me is Burger Odendaal. When Jake arrived at Loftus, one of the first things he did was got rid of Burger Odendaal. Then he ended up at the Lions for a little bit, and then he ended up overseas. And now suddenly, he's one of the best players in this competition. And with the team that ended top of the block is probably the favorite to win the title. And you mentioned earlier about the coaches, this and the coaches that have in common. Jake White's not a palooka. He's not a bad coach or anything, or even a bad manager.
He's good, yeah.
Why would Birgit Odendaal not make it here? He was never bad. He was always sort of thereabouts. He was captain of the Bulls, for example, and of the Lions, if I'm not mistaken. But he just never took that next step. Now he's overseas and he does. It can't just be the analyst, you know. Why? Why is it happening?
No, I think it's a really deep question. It's almost like it's got layers to it, and it's part of the larger story of the incredible talent base that exists in South Africa, but why sometimes it's not allowed to thrive. And I would just say it's almost like speech patterns sometimes in the coaching setup, you know. So I qualify from the leafy southern suburbs of Cape Town to be in the provincial group, you know, and I run, like, you know, I've had kind of cool Afrikaans coaches. They're kind of like rolling a certain way, kind of like your vibe, you know, but then you get into like the real, like, profound Afrikaans coaches back in the day, and they're just telling you how to think, how to move, how to be. Everything has to be so scripted, you know. Hey, Harry, you're my captain now, you long-haired little freak commie. You're gonna pray now, pray to the team. I'm like, in Afrikaans, are you crazy? They're gonna hate me. And it's like, no, you have to. Like, what if I don't even believe in it? No, pray anyway. Like, I'm tired. No, you're not tired. I'm hungry. No, you're not hungry. Like, it's just like this kind of thing, right? And I think we put it on. I think it's a performative thing. It's almost like, you know, that's why I was so hard. I got kicked out of so many games. I was just punching everyone because I wanted to be that hard. I think sometimes you take all that South African talent, you get a guy like Odendaal, or you get a guy like Augustus, you know, Trocchi, that should run through a wall. No, now he has his soft hands. Andre the Giant, he doesn't play the same way in Durban as he plays in Harlequins. Why? Why is that? Why would Van Graan, you know, son of a famous guy, Bulls, you know, power guy, why would he reinvent himself first at Munster, which that tenure looks better now in retrospect, and then at Bath? Like, he's beloved. Why? I think sometimes we get stuck. So I would say there was a cultural thing that got stuck with somehow the coaches, conventional wisdom. I think Dobson's changing some of that. I think he's encouraging people to express themselves. So maybe, you know, it's going to be different. The Sharks are trying to do different things with player welfare and think about your retirement and be okay if you have mental, you have depression, you can still play, right? I think there was a thing that maybe made people more, they were able to be themselves more if they were in Edinburgh than if they were in Graaff-Reinet. So I don't know. I really think sometimes we come home and we're different too. So I'm actually hopeful that some of that stuff where you have people coming home, because when you're playing in the Urk, it's not as important to be Kitsoff in Ulster. It can be Kitsoff in Cape Town and play Ulster. So we'll see. We'll see how it works. But I do think there were people who thrived. You can look at it at Leicester, for example, like Jasper Wiese. Just take Jasper Wiese's story, how he was seen and what he became in the Midlands. The guy got better. I mean, he worked on his discipline, even that final act being, you know, but he really worked on his discipline, became a real Bok, maximum minutes. That guy could run for office in Leicester and win.
Interesting thing, it's not just recently, you know. I think there's different. You remember Ruan Pienaar in Ulster? Because you had to leave, you know.
Great example, yeah.
And then he was so beloved once again, and he became a different player over there. But I think in terms of the coaches, you know, you're talking about this typical South African / Afrikaans. I don't want to step on too many toes here because I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this now. I know I am.
That's you're Afrikaans, eh? You got to be careful.
I am Afrikaans, yeah. I'm Afrikaans speaking. There we go. And I live in Pretoria, brothers and sisters, let me call it that. I live about 500 meters from Loftus Versfeld, from the cathedral. So there you go.
Right next to Offies. This guy's for legit. Yeah, I'm street cred.
I'm actually worse than that. I'm right between Offies and Boys Eye. 500 meters from Loftus. My credentials are impeccable. So take it from whence it comes. There you go. I think the coaches, the exposure to the northern teams in the URC specifically, I think opened a lot of eyes. And Jake, for example, having coached overseas in Montpellier and all over the world, Japan, everywhere else. I think Jake from 20 years ago and Jake from today is not the same person. The Jake I got to know recently at Loftus Versfeld is completely the opposite of what I expected him to be. far more open, gregarious, entertaining in the sense that he listens to you, listens to your questions. You ask him a question this week, next week you come back and he says, I thought about what you asked me last week. Let me talk. I thought I've got a different answer for you this week. That impresses me. Dobson impresses me. I'm not sure about Plumtree. I don't honestly think that he belongs in South African rugby anymore. He's culturally, anything else he doesn't fit. And then I think Cash and Royan, for all the good that he's done, I think he might be a little bit out of his depth. But we'll see what happens there with the Lions. But I think what you said now, that the coaches have also adapted to this new reality, or whatever you want to call it, of us now starting to play in the Northern Hemisphere. It's made a huge difference to our rugby.
Yeah, and players want to have, our players, when they want to have personality, they want to have a profile. And sometimes the old way of doing it was so team orientated that people couldn't thrive. It couldn't be the Diamani. They couldn't build a little brand. I was just hanging out with the Sharks in London recently, got to scrum with Ox and Che, and he'll be on our podcast tomorrow, actually. And I remember, so we just kind of made a funny thing. I said, hey, Ox, what if I walk in and pretend that I just met you, but we scrum, and then just moor me and I'll squeal, whatever. And it kind of was funny because it's funny to scrum against, one of the best scrummers in the world and have fun with it. Plumtree walks through and it's like he didn't understand that the players wanted to have fun. He almost looked at it like one of those old school principles, even when you're having fun, you're not supposed to have fun. So I think you're right with generational issues. I think maybe Jake was able to reinvent himself a little bit. Definitely. I know the Bulls are a high offloading team. They're doing everything that you would not associate a Jake White team, Jake Ball. So, the Bulls are just going into almost like athletic track meet kind of things. Like, hey, we're going to run. What are you going to do? And maybe we'll run out of steam at the final 20, but it doesn't matter because we're so far up. So I think the coaches like Ninaber, who've been able to embrace some of that stuff, the analytics, the new vibe. Rassi's good at that. He's not like a my way or the highway kind of guy. You can see it in Chasing the Sun too. He takes on criticism. He permits people to argue with him and say, no, you're wrong. Or, Peter Steph du Toit does yes bong, and then Rassi cedes the floor to him. Old school coaches wouldn't do that. There we go. Okay, now listen to me. So, isn't it? So I think there's a change. And I think there's something that makes a very small country like Ireland so good at rugby, disproportionately playing above their head in terms of player base. There's unbelievable minds in rugby, like the schools there. So I think it's interesting that some of the players and the coaches are benefiting from this spicy rivalry between us and Ireland. And I think South African rugby is going to benefit from, just like they did from the All Black rivalry, which hopefully is going to, come back even more with these tours. But you get better from playing the best. And right now, in the coaching boxes from schools up, those Irish guys are really understanding rugby in a different way. There's something magical going on there. And, I'm so happy that South African teams are playing against an Ulster, a Munster, a Leinster. It's going to make everything better.
That's the perfect segue. That's an impressive word for an Afrikaans speaking guy. I even pronounced it correctly. Segue. Here we go. Into the
I just segue to work.
We're going to segue into the Irk. And people, the Irk is the URC. So just so you know, next time we're referring to the Irk, you're not going to wonder what the hell we're talking about. So Saturday, we got to know who the quarterfinalists are going to be, and as expected, it's sort of panned out like we thought. Honestly, the Bulls ended up higher than I predicted them to. I thought they're going to end up fourth about 3 or 4 rounds ago, and they did better than I expected. And the Stormers did a bit worse. That loss against the Ospreys sort of damaged their season beyond repair almost. So what did you think? Munster on top there. Do you think that's sort of a proper representation of what we saw there, or was it a bit of a disconnect there? There was one for me in the Irish Shield specifically, a big disconnect. But yeah, let's hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, inside the competition as it's set up with the rules that go before, everyone's playing within them, so it's fine. Whatever it is, it is. Injuries tend to equalize over a season. This call, bad call, this ref, that doesn't matter. Like at the end, you got enough body of information to say it is. But I would say the trajectory at the end of seasons do matter. So Ulster looks better. Even in the loss, I almost felt like they would take more out of that. And they just beat Leinster at Ravenhill. So I would say Ulster is a tough out right now. I like Timoney at the 8. I like how Stockdale's running again. I like Cooney never missing kicks. I like all that. It's good knockout rugby. So it's a very strange position for Ireland where you have Munster, Ulster, Leinster looking like they're almost the same in level. You have the Bulls, I think clearly the class of the South African Shield deserve it. I don't know if the Stormers really hate the idea of playing Glasgow. I think Glasgow is a beatable team on its day. They're a good team, but it's not like going to play in Dublin against Leinster where your heart sinks. Or, I mean, we always like to play the Bulls. Come on, but
we being the Stormers now. You've just you're under.
We got you.
Undergarments
in your
out
psyche.
There.
We're in your psyche. I don't know. It's just weird.
Impervious.
I mean, lately. Let's not talk about 100 years, but just lately, it's inside the irk. So, no, I think the Ospreys, what an achievement actually for Wales. I think that's great. But I think you look at the left side of the ledger and you say Munster, Bulls, Leinster should come through. And I think the only question mark in the quarterfinals will be Stormers in Glasgow.
I tell you what, completely not off the subject, but a little bit left field. The guy that really impressed me was Toby Booth. After the game they played against the Bulls, and he was in the first press conference. And what a nice guy, and a thinker. You can see it. The way he spoke to the guys over there, it wasn't blah 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 blah. Even I don't want to. That sounded a bit funny, but when Frank de Smit was in the conference, it was the weirdest thing to me. The Scottish team's coach speaking English in an Afrikaans accent, Bloemfontein Afrikaans accent for that matter. And it was a bit more blunt and bluff, the old typical South African thing. This Toby Booth guy, I thought, geez, this guy is impressive. So I'm happy for the Ospreys. I'm very sad that the Ospreys went and just broke the Lions' hearts yesterday at the last moment. I mean, the whole South Africa was holding thumbs and sitting on the edge of the seats. That Ospreys don't get 5 points, and they did. So that knocked the Lions out of the tournament. So that was a bit of a sad one for me. But I wanted to talk to you about that Bulls specifically, because that is obviously my first love. Not my only love, but my first one. I'm worried a bit about the Bulls lacking a general. I told that to you before. They're a very good team, a very good attacking team. They do everything well. Their defense has picked up a lot lately. They don't reach so many tries towards the end. They don't fall away. But there's no one dictating the game like you would have wanted someone to dictate the game. I'm worried about the fly-off specifically for the Bulls, and I think it's going to catch them out towards the end of this competition.
Why do you think so? Your assessment of Hussein then is on the table. What do you think is going on there? Because I always fancied him as when he was in Montpellier, he was highly rated by all the talent scouts. He's got physical attributes. He's got vision. He's quick, actually, still brave. He's both good of both feet. Well, you think it's something in terms of decision making in the end for him that always seems to come unwound, or what?
Yeah, number one is erratic. So you'll have a very good game and a very bad game, or you have a very good game and a very bad game in the same game. It's sort of up and down a lot. I tend to think in the terms of Handre Pollard, for example. If you think Handre Pollard in the current Bulls team, what a difference that would make, and to answer your question. It's not nearly the same thing. There's a lot of a lack of imagination, if I could almost call it that. That most of the playing is done by the rest of the back line, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. It's just the feeling that I had. I spent a lot of time at Loftus this season, specifically watching the games live. And it stood out to me how Hussein wasn't dominating. I don't know if that's the right word. It was more the people on his outside, the crew, for example, and the people making the likes and the likes. That's the feeling that I got. Chris Smith, for me, for sure, is not up there. Now, Jay's gone and bought Boeta Chamberlain, of all people, from the Sharks. Jaco van der Walt never even got a chance maybe this year. You and I spoke about Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu would have been a perfect acquisition for the Bulls. Now, just picture that. Put him in the Bulls side.
Take your hands off Sasha.
He's signed for 3 years. It's too late.
Chamberlain has got a great name. He should come on the pod too, because he's basically like a north-south name. It's a lekker.
Straddling both worlds. There you go.
Are you Boeta or you Chamberlain? I don't know. So no, I think you're right that the person's not bossing it. He's not doing what Aaron Cruden did at Montpellier when they sort of overlapped there, and you thought, wow, Why is it the same kind of build, not necessarily huge as guys, but why is Aaron Cruden playing better? Well, he would set up attack systems. He was better at the sort of proto-pod before the pods became so ubiquitous. He was good at running things. And maybe Johan's not really that kind of guy. I don't know. Maybe he's more of a daydreamy guy. Maybe he's looking up and wondering where the brandy and coke is, the booty roll. I don't know.
We know where the brandy and coke is.
He drifts in and out of games, is I think your point.
Yeah.
I thought Pollard, if you stick Handre Pollard in Leinster, they would have beaten Toulouse in the final, for example. Like exactly what Toulouse needed was you got your Jacques Nienaber defense, holds them to 15 in regular. Now you need some guy to just drop goal.
Yeah. If Pollard was there, that drop goal would have been over, and Leinster would have won it.
Over, right. And don't stuff it up. Like maybe a couple other places, maybe they actually win easier. But in that sense, I do think Jake White, if you held him down and we gave him true serum, or a guy like me, a fixer, had him, in a little wood cabin in the woods. I go, Jake, come on, tell me now.
Yeah.
He would say that's what he lacks, and that's what he worries about. But I don't know if you can take a guy's mentality like that, and I don't know. Like, can you coach that into Goosen, or is that just the way he is? No, you don't.
I asked him about these fly-off plans. I'm sorry to talk about the Bulls so much, but I asked him, and he specifically said, Chris Smith was on the way out. He's just looking for a new contract. They've released him. I told him he must just play in the Currie Cup. Then he can have 8 weeks leave. And if he can find something else in the meantime, they'll let him go. So he's gone.
Yeah. I'm worried I'm worried that you have a comb over. Chris Smith has a comb over, a premature comb over. And Buta also has some suspicious hair. You might need to get a guy with just,
a proper haircut.
Andre Pollard hair, like movie star hair. Yeah.
There you go. All right. And it just that Leinster thing, Andre Pollard to Leinster seems to be not pie in the sky. There seems to be something there. Am I right?
It would be the missing piece, actually. The thing they had was Sexton with Johnny. You think the same thing with Johnny Sexton probably would have made the drop goal too. But not even before that, he would have, I think he would have positioned things different. So having a coach on the field, if you actually watch games, Pollard gets a bad name, but if you go back and see all the knockout matches he ever played, he makes such good decisions. He's so rarely penalized. He has a really good running game. He can set the ruck target himself, even if Delende is covered up. Pollard can go, and just being able to get over the gain line as a 10, it's underrated. And present the ball and never get stripped, never pilfered. There's a lot of stats in rugby that don't show up, and one of them is don't get pilfered, right? And so Pollard's that kind of guy. He knows when to kick cross, and then for some reason he has ice in his veins when it comes for the pressure. And may I just point out that Pollard's from the Western Cape? But go ahead, yeah.
May I just point out that the Bulls made him?
Heineke Meyer from the Houston SaberCats.
I want to talk to you about that one specifically, the Houston SaberCats as well. Yeah. All right, let's look at the URCs. Who do you think is going to be in the semis? You know who's going to be in the quarters now, but fairly obvious who should go. You said the three on the left-hand side, Munster, Bulls, Leinster. On the right-hand side, you said probably either the Stormers or Ulster. What would you say? Who's going to be?
I think the little wee tiny fighting spirit Stormpies sneak in and grow a leg and an arm. I'm smelling a north-south derby for the end, just to make everyone in the north really angry and say, why is the Irk being taken over by the Southers? 3 years in a row, finals, bound, Stormers. Yeah, let's go that. Okay, I'll give you my rationale behind it. I think the Bulls really are the best team in the Irk this year. I think, notwithstanding some hiccups here and there, I think they have the ability to score more points than people can match. So it's like in tennis, one of the sports that I'm fairly decent at, a city champ. I'm playing in the seniors nationals here in the US pretty soon with mixed doubles. You go on the court, if in the warm-ups, if you can tell that you can always win every long rally, you just rally. You just never even try to hit a winner. You just go, like, we're going to play every time and you'll always lose. I think the Bulls can do that. When you say maybe the Stormers and you're going to have to do something tricky, you can shorten the point. Angles, I'm going to come to the net more. I'm going for more risky shots and going for the line. And then you just bank on the fact that I can pull out something crazy because I'm calmer in my craziness than you are. But the Bulls have a thing where the Jakes just said, we can notch a certain number of attacking sets during the game. We have the ball this many times and we can do these many things. And our ability to score in different ways is going to be good. So I kind of think the Bulls ride. the wave to the final this time. On the other side of the draw, I think Ulster is going to put a dent in Leinster. I can really see that being a problem. And then I think also Leinster's overplayed a little bit. I think they haven't been able to platoon. You saw how that happened in the World Cup quarterfinals, and you've seen how that's happened to Leinster a number of times. The new intensity of Jacques there, he might almost be burning them out. Who knows? Like, sign your name. Every tackle matters. Life or death. At some point, a chill guy like John Dobson might be, riding the wave. So I don't know. I'm kind of thinking, I'm smelling a derby for the ages, a derby for the cup in the high altitude.
Yeah.
Right next to you.
Stormpiece in the Bulle. There we go.
In the abattoir.
Oh,
no, it's going to be tough. It's going to smell like beer and piss and brandy and Coke. And I think you guys really should win. On the Harry Index, by the way, the Bulls are the 6th best club team in the world. And I have them above Munster. So I think you guys have it.
Well, the thing is, for us to get to that derby that you talked about, and by that we're saying Bulls and Stormers at Loftus, we have to get past Leinster next week at Loftus. But the first time that we're going to be playing a full-strength Leinster team at Loftus.
It's in Loftus.
Yeah, it will be at Loftus because we're above Leinster.
I mean, it's the main point. It's the crucial point. Yeah.
You can't just pitch up at Loftus and expect to win. Sorry, Leinster. Yeah.
No, I would if it was in Dublin, I'd pick Leinster. It's that simple. It's that important to get a home semi-final.
Jake and I got into a bit of a debate about this. Altitude matters. You know that sign as you run out the tunnel? That sign above the tunnel that says altitude matters, 1,000 so many meters above sea level. I asked him, does that still count? And he went on about being a sports scientist, and he studied this physical education, and that does matter, whatever. Munster showed the other teams how to overcome that. And Glasgow almost got away with doing the same thing the week after that at Loftus. They know how to counter the altitude. And Glasgow also applied the same lessons to the Lions with less success, I must hasten to add. I think Leinster is going to be clever, especially with Jock being in that team. I think that Leinster Loftus thing, even though it's at Loftus, and I agree with you, I think the Bulls are probably one of the better teams, if not the best. It's going to be a humdinger. I can't. Honestly, I think my nerves can take it. I don't think I'll go to bed and I'll have to wake up afterwards, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, altitude does matter, right? If I drink 5 brandy cokes in Cape Town, I feel a certain way. If I drink 5 brandy cokes at Loftus, I'm like walking into the wrong toilets. So yeah, it messes with your brain a little bit, the altitude. I think crazy can work. I climbed a mountain, Mount Popo in Mexico, without oxygen, and you start to think weird things. You start to think you can fly and so forth. So I think Munster is crazy enough to handle altitude because Peter O'Mahony probably just goes into some kind of ancient Celtic war chieftain mode. Archie can do the same thing from a Viking standpoint. They're kind of a crazy team. Nankiville, that name is crazy, Nankiville. That's why it's different. Leinster is a proper team. They're a private schoolboy team, St. Michael's, Black Rock. They like things to be pretty. Like they say, they have a beautiful bike with beautiful sprockets and spokes, and it's all very well polished. Altitude makes you feel weird and do weird stuff. So if you're a team that can play weird, like Munster kind of like enjoy. It's like a guy, he looks like he should be a good fighter, but the first time he gets punched in the face, he doesn't like it because he's wondering if he's still going to be pretty. Munster doesn't mind about being ugly. Like they just got a big flattened mug, broken nose, like that kind of guy. Like we like that. Like I like contact. I like the rolling around on the ground. I like a barroom brawl. So I think maybe Leinster is going to suffer in the semi-final and they're going to come away thinking that wasn't fair. It felt wrong. We played all the rugby. Why did the Bulls win? I don't know. I just think the Bulls can go both ways. They can still tap into their old roots and play Bulls ball, or they can play this new high octane. Let's score 40, let's score 38 and see if you can match us. The only thing for the Bulls, and that's what you've already highlighted, is game management. If it is tight. So I think Bulls need to go out and get a lead, because I think if it's tight, I do worry about some of the decision-making from 9, 10, 15.
9, 10, 15. Why nine? Nine just signed for another 3 years. I think Emrys Papi is probably one of the better scrum masters at the moment.
I like him. I remember I was in Edinburgh and I watched him and Murrayfield just streak down the field and no one could catch him. And I went to Archea and Kitsoff and they scored, I think, with the next ruck phase. Great. I mean more like Fleury Dupree kind of control the game kind of mind. So if my 10's being flaky, then I need my 9 to take over. I don't know if he's got that takeover energy. Hosen might do something weird. And then, we always got Billy with his special magic. So, yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm picking the Bulls to go all the way.
And the Stormers, you reckon, obviously they're going to beat Glasgow in Scotland, and they're going to go, travel across the whatever channel that might be to Ireland, take on Munster, and then they're going to be victorious there, and then going to come back all the way to Loftus. And then Rassie's worst nightmare is going to come true. Bulls and Stormers on the same day the Wales test is taking place. Can't pick any of those players. I mean, what can be worse? What can be better in the same breath?
The old Japanese Bok team. And that's why it's good. Like, that's why we have to pod globally, because the players are global now. And I think, picking a Bok team now is being a Bok fan. You have to watch so much rugby across the globe. But no, I think that's not ideal for picking. However, we should always be able to beat Wales in the Republic with a Bok team. It just has to happen, right? So I think it's interesting to see how far they go. Stormers should not get to the final. Okay, so I'm being a little bit silly here. My nonsense could be very nonsensical, but I do think in playoff rugby, just like playoff elite sport anywhere, having gotten to a level allows you to go to the level. Like, you remember, if you ever got to the final and it's recent and you got there again, you kind of know how to get there. It's that whole, like, when you run your first marathon, you think you're going to die. And the second time you're like, oh no, it's supposed to feel like this. It's okay. I got 2 more miles. Let's go. So I think there's some of that. I think the pressure is immense right now on some of the Irish teams. I think Leinster and Munster, their fandom is pushing pressure on them, whereas I think the Stormers are kind of loose, and they're not supposed to win. So that's good for South African teams.
The Stormers got a problem. They've got Willems out. Who's the other guy that's out now? I can't remember the name, but yeah, Willems out's a big loss for them. I mean, that is going to be a major setback for them. Yeah,
that was a terrible injury. He played the whole game too with those fingers.
I mean, he shook hands as well. He was hanging. His hand was hanging on the side. He was shaking hands with his left hand, if I'm not mistaken. It's bad for Stormers.
Yeah, it's bad for Stormers. It's good for Boks in a way, because some of these players have been overplayed for 3 years, and I know he logged a lot of minutes. And he's a high impact guy. He's a scramble defense guy. He never gives up on a play. So like some of those players, you almost think like, maybe they should get a little bit of a rest, and he'll come back better.
We talked about that game at Twickenham against Wales, and what Rassie's got available. We just read today in the Report newspaper that Malcolm Marx will probably start that game, having only played against Scotland in the World Cup, and they got injured in that test practice session afterwards. Rassie's adamant he must go directly into the starting team, which then relegates Bongi to the bench and then takes Bongi out of the captain equation. Who do you reckon is going to be the captain in that game?
Probably Eben. So Pietersteph was captain in Washington, D.C. against Wales, and it didn't go well. And I fancy Rassie as a bit of a superstitious guy. I also think Pietersteph is just better as a torpedo with one mindset, pierce enemy lines, get behind, make trouble, be one of those like saboteurs where you're blowing up ships and stuff in a war, just everything is chaotic. Ibben's really improved his ability to talk to refs, to relate. I think the time overseas and his media work has helped him. He's got a sly little irony now, how he presents issues to the ref. He works the ref. He shrugs instead of emotes. He doesn't do that blunt thing like, are you crazy? Like, he actually really gets in there and works the ref. So I think he studied it. He's a bit of a thinker. Being around the Sharks setup, what they told me about him is he gets really quiet before matches. He's very superstitious as well, like only pasta before a game, only chicken. It's one of those guys. I think that's a good look for the Boks on a game like this, which could be tricky. It's not in the Republic. I was wrong. Twickenham. So I think it's going to be important to work the ref really well. I also think there's some continuity there. Even in the terrible dark years of Alistair Coetzee, Ibn was a good captain and he rallied the team, and the team respects him. Bongi's a bit of a firebrand. So I'm kind of, in a way, I'm kind of happy. I think also incumbency with injury, you should go right back into the spot. It's a bit like over the years, sometimes Dwayne Vermeulen had this happen to him, and you just get your spot back. You just go in, you do it because I trust you. Malcolm Marx, I trust that guy. I would trust him with anything, right? He's just a guy who delivers. And quite frankly, Bongi is probably more injured than Malcolm at the moment. I mean, that his body has been ravaged. I was lucky enough to sit in the World Cup final right next to Stacey Manabi and the kid. And, and that injury was ridiculous, right? So it's difficult to imagine that he's 100% as well. And you want your captain to be 100%. So I would imagine, I look at Malcolm Marx's pictures on Instagram, his triceps are as big as a house now. So he's been really beefing up. I bet he's going to be good. I hope it doesn't affect his throwing. I think we're well stocked on leadership, but for me it's the bill collector. It's a myth.
Couple of things there. Firstly, I think Peter Steff is a lead by example kind of guy. The guy that doesn't speak much, but the way he does things, like that final when he just got 28 tackles, Barrett couldn't look up and he was down on the floor again. That's the kind of leadership that leads by example. Even there was a big debate, and we spoke about this earlier, in the Sharks. Who's the actual captain? Was the captain on paper, but the guy on the field that spoke to the ref and made all the calls and the decisions was Eben. And that sort of maturity he talked about actually shone through quite a bit. Sorry for that. And then Bongi, he upset quite a few people with the way that he spoke to Amy Barrett-Tron. He apologized afterwards and everything, but that horse had bolted at that stage. Not a good impression that he made there. I don't think his Springbok captain days are as close as we all expected it to be. He seems to be a bit of a loose cannon to a degree. Do you agree with that?
Bongi needs to work a little bit on the maturity of us against the world, this kick is for South Africa. Go, Handre. I get all that. But also there's seasons for that. There's a time for this and a time for that. I think he's kind of all way, one way or the other. Like he's kind of like a incredible Hulk kind of guy. Gets revved up, undersized in a way. And so he's got to play like that, a chip on the shoulder. I'm not sure that's captaincy vibe over a long period of time. I think it could be, at the end of a game, he's on the field and you just want someone to say, never say die. I get that. But I don't know, like working the game, not for me.
So one last thing I wanted to talk about just briefly. You mentioned that like Bongi is ravaged, for example. He's played too much rugby. And South Africa is a big thing about players playing too much at the moment. We should have heard about this more than a week ago. I don't know if you know about the arbitration case about the Currie Cup, are they going forward or not? They squeezed the Currie Cup in now between the URC in the Test Championship window. What it effectively meant was that the players would have to play for 20 months uninterrupted. Some players, not all of them. So the My Players Association has now declared a dispute with SARU and SARIO, South African Rugby Employees Organisation, whose CEO happens to be Barend van Graan, the one that we spoke about earlier. So there's a very good chance that the Currie Cup might not go forward. And the reason I'm asking this is the players seem to be stepping up a bit and claiming their pound of flesh, like it's exactly what's happening in New Zealand at the moment. They're threatening to break away from New Zealand, and whatever they wanted didn't happen on Thursday when New Zealand voted against not accepting their proposal, but rather going for the proposal that the union wanted. Do you honestly think the New Zealanders might end up not having any players to play with?
I mean, the threat will work. Players in New Zealand have leverage. They've done, for the most part, people have given up lucrative contracts to stay in New Zealand. They've been good lads. They've followed the system. And they're also more revered. I think they can pull that. In life in general, I kind of squash unions. Unions are kind of my enemy in some ways because I work for capital and I preserve capital's place at top of the food chain. But I do think in professions like mining in China or hog slaughter in Mexico. Unions are the way that you make people safer. And in the beginning of that kind of cycle, you need it. And I think rugby is still very amateur professional. The number of dollars that come through, pound sterling, rands, it's phenomenal. And the percentage of it going to players is not enough. There's not enough set aside for horrific injuries. Speaking of injuries, people are kind of left on their own at any point in time in your 3 to 7 to 10 year career. You can lose it all. And there's nothing set aside. That doesn't seem right. So I think unions do need to be stronger. And I think in New Zealand, they are stronger, as you would expect in New Zealand with some of their progressive politics and what they've done in their life in general, in business in general in New Zealand. Union power is very strong. I think in countries where it's not, it'll be more difficult. People will view it as being, how dare you withhold your labor to extract more capital? But that's kind of like how it works. So if you get enough leverage and you say, I'm not going to play and be your little poodles, for your television productions, unless you do more, then there'll be a deal. So I don't know how it works in South Africa in particular. I think it's not going to be as easy. I think in New Zealand it will be a little more effective. Because you get into like some cultural issues there about, I think for a long time with Pacifica players and Maori players, there's been this feeling of, we use you up, you're like human ammunition, and then it's done. And there's, for every guy we know, like Artie Savea, there's also 20 guys who are just as good, who are walking around with a bum knee or a bad back, and they got nothing to show for it. So long-winded, sorry, but I just think that rugby has to mature in the process of player safety, player welfare, mental health as well, and say, this is a career and you can trust us, bring me your boys and girls to play this game, because there's going to be something there for them at the end. Jasper used to play too much rugby. There was a couple of years there where you see how many impacts he had, tackle, rock, and carry. It wasn't stupid. I mean, he was basically in a car crash every day. So there was no one watching out for him. It was just like Leicester Tigers box, let's go. You can run through a wall. Good luck. But I mean, I think we should think about it differently. And, so hopefully we can get to a point where the amount of money that runs through in World Cups and in some of these big events, which fund the rest of the game, 80% of our revenue comes from test rugby, then we can set aside something for players' future and welfare.
You mentioned the unions. Interesting about the My Players organization in South Africa is that if the Currie Cup doesn't go ahead, you're going to have 200 or 300 players losing their jobs. At the Griquas and the Pumas and the Cheetahs and everybody else, because what they're going to do, where they're going to play. So you're looking after your top 30 or 40 players. I think they said they're concerned about them, but they forgot about all the rest. There has to be some sort of a compromise. I'm sure there will be, but the fact that it went to arbitration and not it wasn't settled before then is a bit of a concern, I would think.
What they do in New Zealand is they use a sabbatical and they write it into contracts. So what you want is, you want to have a lot of pathways for players, and you want to have enough teams that coaches can coach in, so they're not always abroad. You want to spread the proprietary information, that kind of like good stuff, the secret sauce around. They use Japan as their off-brand sabbatical. I think South Africa is doing the same thing now as well. Those contracts are written in, but you also want to have games that matter. Like the reason why Varsity Cup sometimes is more exciting than Currie Cup is because at least everyone there thinks there's an affiliation between the guys on the field playing for, Shimla's or UCT or Marty's, because they think those are the best guys, whether they're from Kosais or else. They got on the field and I'm going to die for them as my team. So that's the excitement. And then you don't want to have Currie Cup feel like it's only a third or fourth string farm club system for the Stormers or the Sharks,
Interesting. We had a lot of school rugby this weekend as well. I'll tell you what, schools rugby
love it.
Is
the best.
We're spending a lot of time on that now, paying a lot of attention to it. And one of the guys we speak to often is Nicolis, that used to coach Tukkies in the days when they ruled Varsity Cup. So interesting times. bigger than, I think, a lot of professional games. I don't know if I told you this. When I walked to Loftus the other day when they played against Benetton, I went through Offies, because it's on the way there. I walked through there. Offies was playing against Grey. There were more people at Offies than there was at Loftus watching that game. It's hectic. And
No,
at
it's
the same
brilliant.
time. Thanks,
Must
Harry.
beat.
We'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, you appreciate it.
Cheers.
The Lekker Rugby Pod, rugby across the globe from a South African perspective.